G'day legends, I hope that you're having a fantastic day and so far a fantastic week. Now today I'm going to have to belt feed this video just a little bit. I've got a lot to do. I've got some writing to do, some reading to do before of course I go to my appointment tonight with my neurosurgeon. Of course, a professor of neurosurgery. And I will say I'm fairly anxious about this appointment. I don't know exactly how this will go, but I will update you guys as soon as I know if there's any further details and what treatment we do start next. Because as you know, on Tuesday, my surgeon went to a multidisciplinary meeting with oncologists, radiologists, other doctors, just to discuss what should we do forwards from here. So I'll let you know as we go, but I really look up to my neurosurgeon. She performs brain surgery and spinal surgery literally all day, and then has appointments well into the evening or super early in the morning. Don't idolize celebrities. The people like this are absolutely true role models and worth their weight in gold. One day I'll talk her into doing a podcast. Anyway, legends, I also have lied to you a little bit. I did say I'm going to have a beer when Deep State Maps finally updates Robotnik. Now, today, let's have a little zoom in down in here, and we can see that this area has been updated. Now, the lie has come. I'm not going to drink a beer today. I'm about 65 hours into a fast to try and put myself into a better position for further treatment. But when I have a break from this, 100%, I will have a beer because we've been waiting for that to update for a long, long time. Now, of course, today what we have, we're going to look at maps, we're going to look at mobilisation, need to look at even North Korean troops, talk about strikes and talk about fighter aircraft also. But where I want to start is with the strikes. So Ukraine has had a number of attacks overnight with drones and missiles as well, attacking warehouses and ammo depots. So this first one that I'm going to show you is a warehouse in Krasnodar, claimed that it had 400 Shahed drones inside of this. And as you can see, there are secondaries, massive fires, and further explosions also. Exactly what was hit here, well, it is impossible to know, but we can see some of these secondaries further cook off as well, since those drones and missiles did strike. And you can see clearly here that something explosive has gone bang. Now, that's not the only ones. This ammunition depot in Kursk in Bryansk, right in here, was struck by the same drones and missiles as well overnight. Another mass attack. Now, we have no real update on what exactly was destroyed or damaged here. Again, what we will get is satellite imagery. But like I said, when we saw those other ammunition depots hit, the real battle damage assessment will not be what is burnt, what is exploded. The real assessment will be give it a week, give it 2 weeks, maybe give it a month, and see what effect that has had on the front lines. So, we do have a couple from Russia as well. Now, most importantly, we have at least claimed Patriot missile system that has been destroyed by Iskander M missiles. So you can see this drone looking on here. This was released by Russian media. Now, the clearest thing of this is not a decoy is, well, you can see these launchers fire off some rockets. Now, the missile launchers themselves, these are not the most important part of a battery. The most important part is the command center and the radar. As you can see by this box here, then we see an Iskander M then land at least right on that, in the vicinity of it. There will be mass damage to this. Now, further elements also then struck by missiles here too. Of course, we always just get potato camera, but as you can see, there is definitely damage and destroyed elements to this system. Now, interestingly, where is this located? So this is located just to the southwest of Dnipro, just up from Zap, Dnipro. I don't have the geolocation on me right now, but if we take where Zap is, where Dnipro, sitting out around this area here. Now, I see a lot of people going, well, this, red impact, blue launches, that there was no damage. Again, like this guy says here, my brother in Christ, the red impact is literally where the radar and command center for the support vehicles are located. That is literally the most important part of the Patriot battery. In the end, we see the impact of the radar, but also from what we presume to be a launcher. So there was definitely damage on this. And I've seen a lot of people comment, well, if it can't repel the Iskander or the drone in the air, good luck repelling something like a Kinzhal. Now, what we have seen is in this that there is a drone in the air watching it, as well as those missiles come in that were not intercepted. That raises a few concerns. Now, Iskanders have had some procedural changes over the last 12 months and reports of production increases as well. And this is definitely reflected on the success that the Iskanders are having on the front line. If you're unaware of that, some of the Iskanders went then under the control of artillery units, so they have those drones, then the gun artillery as well, under the command, including now missiles like the Iskanders 2. And this year, particularly very recently in the past, say 2 to 3 months, it is objectively true that we have seen a massive increase in the successful targeting of the Iskander missiles. Now, even if it's against a decoy at some point, we have seen an increase in the amount that are available and the accuracy on targets. And amongst the decoys, then we see some real ones hit, like the Patriot. Now, remember, Ukraine has a very, very limited amount of Patriot systems. Each one of those taken out therefore means things like your Su-34s, your MiG-31s are going to be more effective on the front line. Now, in this, we see we're going to talk about fighter jets right now. Now, UAC, United Aircraft Company, of course, they build the Su aircraft for Russia and do the modernization as well. That they've delivered another batch of Su-34 frontline bombers to the Russian aerospace forces. Another batch, Su-34, has joined the ranks of the aerospace forces. The rhythm and timeliness deliveries speaks to the well-coordinated work of the aviation industry in interest of the Russian armed forces. So again, always with this, they never, ever, ever give us a figure of what a batch is. But like I always do when they release this, well, I look at the footage that they release. And in the footage here, it does show 2 Su-34s. So I'm presuming the batch is 2 Su-34s. My opinion is the jet that is making by far the most difference in this war, carrying those Fab glide bombs. Also, it looks like a duck, but I like the look of it. Like I always say, if we could get Lockheed to do all the electronics and the tech and UAC Sukhoi to just design the aircraft, that is how you make the best looking and the most deadly aircraft in the world, where the tech and the looks then combine. But another batch of those delivered. And from what I'm seeing in these deliveries, if we take the deliveries as true, we take even the claims of down Su-34s as true, this year, Russia, in my opinion, is either meeting at a net neutral or positive replacement of Su-34s. And those are a real problem. Of course, they're dropping those Fab glide bombs. But furthermore, on aircraft, we need to talk about MiG-31K. Basically just a massive engine with a cockpit put on it as an interceptor. But, of course, the MiG-31Ks are what carry the Kh-47 Kinzhal hypersonic air ballistic missiles. Now, this page here, this Hajan, they are reporting that for the first time since April the 6th, 2023, that is the first time that MiG-31s have actually been then in Belarus in a year and a half. So could we see these conduct more attacks into Kyiv or other areas? Of course, massively shortening the distance, therefore shortening how long you have to intercept these missiles into Ukraine. Potentially, is it a jet that flies a couple of thousand k's an hour and can just fly into Belarus and they're there for a bit? That as well. But I just thought that is an important thing to note if we do have more missiles coming from Belarus into Ukraine. We have seen Belarusian air and territory be used before to launch attacks into Ukraine. I completely forgot to film this part, but this video has come out as well, shared a lot by Russian pages, and they're saying that this is 2 Russian missiles hitting a ship carrying military cargo in the port just south of Odessa. We do know recently we have seen an increased amount of strikes against ships. We have seen some photographs of ships with grain coming out of them after they've been hit, but we're also seeing some like this claims that some of these ships are carrying those Beck drone boats or bringing military hardware into Ukraine as well. So let's now have a look at the maps. Of course, we have Ukraine in the center, the capital of Kyiv. The red areas occupied since 22, the purple since 2014. Now, as you can see, we do have a number of changes on this map today. But where I want to go down first is down into Dsc Blast. Of course, this is the Pokrovsk and becoming Kursk front. Now, what we do see is more advancement out through Tashkerne, capturing most of Tashkerne, but there's still this little bit on the west that is still under Ukrainian control or contested grey zone by this map. But then we look at Kursk right here. Of course, we believe the Russian forces are out near Ostrivsky here. But what we have seen today is footage come out, hadn't seen this before, at least in Kursk, of TOS-1 Alpha, the multi-launch rocket system thermobaric from Russia, launching into Kursk itself. This is a devastating weapon. Everywhere we've seen this used, it is absolutely devastating. The large drawback with this weapon is they have very limited amounts and they're very short range, therefore very susceptible to things like drones and being spotted. But what we have spoken about is Russia trying to get elements forward to bring those into range before then they launch ground assaults on areas. And in my opinion, we often see TOS-1 Alpha working on an area in the weeks coming up to when we see then infantry and armoured assaults on a front, because it is susceptible. They have a range of about 10 Ks. So somewhere, if this is landing in Kursk, this is right on the front line somewhere. We also saw those work in Vuhledar just before we saw then the fall of that front as well. So we do have a Syriac update on this axis in here just today. Now, what we did speak about was military summary. He basically said that this area had all closed up in here. Syriac is showing fairly similar. So Russian army advanced south of Zeleny Dru and took over a small locality of Sofivka. So this is, I believe, just right where this is here, but it is not labelled on this map. But Zeleny Dru has said to come under control as well. Currently, Ukrainian army has practically withdrawn from the salient east of Vovcha. So this area in here, this salient, pulling back out to Kurikivka and the rest of Hernik as well. I think in the next coming days, we will see this further close up from how we've seen these maps then report this and then be reflected on other maps as we go. So just an area of which you should be just tracking along. Now, we come down Vuhledar, we do see further from the north, out even then to the east of Vodiane, more Russian advancement here, following, of course, where that fell over. Let's look on the then Syriac maps, and this is what we like to see, is when two maps actually are confirming very, very similar, then we can go, yep, there was definitely movement or definitely not movement there, but definitely some movement, increasing that buffer zone out from Vuhledar itself. Now, what we have as well on Deep State Map is confirming this movement and partial occupation of Zolota Niva. About 3 days ago, I showed you the geolocated armoured footage of an armoured attack into here. Then we saw some flags go up. We're going to speak about flags in a sec, but this is showing that there is at least a partial occupation of that area, and as well, of course, Robotny down in here, come up into Toretsk. Now, only a smaller advancement seen here out from Zalesny towards Toretsk, but other maps are painting a very different picture. Now, let's then have a look on Ukrainian source Noel reports. Now, this is not the easiest to see, but I'll give you some landmarks to have a look for. See where this road has this dog leg in it? That he's saying the Russian forces are out to this road as well, all the way down to Nepelivkia as well. So he's showing this area in here. A lot of this has been filled up where my cursor is currently. So definitely some changes in there, because we know, well, that's shifting. Noel's showing more shift, and then Syriac is showing more shift as well. What he is showing is it's then well beyond this road, as well as the fill up in these areas as well. The Russian army took control over the most of the district of Zabalka, the area of Nakhelvka, and the forest area south of it. Russian forces made small advances in the north of the Kemerovka Strait. So further out near Dashny Druzhba area, I believe, as well. So 100% what we confirm is there was definitely advance in this area. How much? We don't know. We did know yesterday that Ukrainian officials did say there's fighting at every doorway or street in Toretsk at the moment, at least in the eastern outskirts, but moving into further areas internally here also. Now, let's have a little zoom out. Now, we don't have any other red shown on this map today, but if we just come up into this like Vovchansk front, there is a slight grey zone increase. So out from Staritsia, it doesn't show that there was advancement, but it does show there's less controlled territory by the Russians there. I can't show that across any other maps in here, but where we need to come, of course, is into the Seversk front. Now, there was some large claims in here yesterday out through this area and out into Hrovkia as well. Now, Suryak and a number of maps have updated what they see that actually occurred in here. Noel Reports also has a map in here also. Now, Bihovka and of course Hirovkia, he's showing more movement down into Hirovkia as well. I believe he's probably showing more than what Suryak has now fallen back on in this front. So let's see what he has said. Situation Seversk front, despite the geolocations, Russian advances on the front were either exaggerated or short-lived. Russian army was able to take the northern hill of Bilohorivka and from the advance without resistance to Horovka. So they moved through to here without resistance. However, after raising the flag, the Russian forces withdrew. The truth is, Horovka is a ghost town, heavily destroyed, where it is impossible to settle. Of course, the reports about the capture of half of Serebryanka were not true. Similar is the case with Bilohorivka, which is empty except for a small Ukrainian presence on the southern hill. In reality, the Ukrainian presence is further back in the wooded area, full of trenches south of Hirovka. So in this wooded area, full of trenches in here, they are able to move through and move back, plant those flags, and of course everyone made then a video on it. But definitely, this is contested. If you've even got any presence of guys in there, it's definitely a contested area. Down in here, we get a little bit better idea from Suryak showing on the map today. Now, where he shows are some of the areas taken by the Russian forces. So this is Bilohorivka, and these are some of the areas in the wooded front here and some new advancements. Now, as well, where he's showing is where some of the flags were raised and some claims of where then the Ukrainian forces are as well. Of course, this blue, this is the Serebryanka, where, of course, he's saying, no, that was not true. And this is the white one is where we saw that flag go up today. Of course, map's showing different, but does show some slight shift as well out from Zolotorivka, which is in the direction of where we saw the other flag flown. We do see some change as well. So there's definitely advancement, but not to the degree that was claimed. As for this area, Ukrainian army continues to control the western part of the locality, from where just 2 days ago the Russian flag was remotely raised. Situation around Viminka, which we will have a look at Vimimka, is right down in here. Was also clarified. Despite the MOD announcement on the railway station was captured by Russian forces while the settlement remains under Ukrainian control. So this is Viminka in here. It was said that this was then taken by Russian forces, but it remains under Ukrainian control. On the other hand, it should be noted that Russian troops did manage to take new positions in the forest south of Seversky Donetsk River, as we have seen up here. So a bit of a clarification on exactly what the maps are showing, and mapping by anything is very, very difficult. Now, let's have a look at draft mobilization and North Korean troops. Now, lots of bloggers online love to take the piss out of North Korean troops. Because it is an authoritarian dictatorship, I would have no interest living there at all. But you can't downplay how much of a difference just extra hands and extra bodies can make in an attritional war. At the end of the day, the ability to replace losses, to then have just manpower on the front and increase your bottom level of troops up to a standard is what wins attritional wars. So don't downplay this at all. The North Korea is likely to send troops to Ukrainian support of Russia from South Korea's defense chief. That we saw in, I believe it was June, a mutual defense clause signed by North Korean leader and Putin, and it deployed members of its own armed forces in support of Russia. They do say it is likely. Now, the South Korean defense chief says, as Russia and North Korea have signed a mutual treaty akin to a military alliance, the possibility of such deployment is highly likely. Now, we have reported on this before and everyone took the piss out of it. But at the end of the day, North Korea has a lot of troops. They can make a lot of weapons. And extra hands, extra people gaining experience is very, very important in war. And I think, like we reported then, like was being reported then, that these are likely engineers. So they may not be in storm units at the front conducting offensive or even defensive operations, but it may be allowing other units to then move out of defensive works onto some of those areas, because these engineers being deployed to build just fortifications, to build a temporary bridge, to just dig in an area. Again, the advancing force needs to fortify very quickly to move forward. This is where that myth of the Russians are fighting with shovels came from. This was cleared up by a Polish foreign fighter who I interviewed on this channel. He said, no, that's not true. They weren't storming with fucking shovels. There may have been a case where someone hit someone with a shovel, but that's not the case. He said what they've got is they have full units of guys who, once the front line moves, just to go in and dig down straight away, to dig in your defensive positions once that front line is moving. And he said at the time, you can go and listen to the interview. I think it's called Interview with Batman or something. That was like his call sign. Either way, he said that was very effective because every time they moved, they had areas. I think this is still significant. So again, extra bodies, extra hands do make a difference. Now, let's talk about draft and some changes in Ukraine. Zelensky halts draft deferments, orders a review. After learning that 1.5 million draft-eligible Ukrainians were granted mobilization deferments as employees of critical enterprises, President Volodymyr Zelensky suspended future deferment applications until November 15th. That Zelensky was reported dissatisfied with how many Ukrainian companies were able to shield their employees from getting mobilized into military service. And we've spoken about this before. We've seen things like this. This came out on April the 8th. Ukrainian Circus TV channels recognised as critically important companies allowing employees to defer military service. Furthermore, Zelensky then ordered an audit of the list of critically important enterprises, employees of which are exempt from the draft. Suspended until November 15th, provisions regarding criteria and procedures for determining enterprises, institutions, and organisations that are critically important for the national economy. Of course, what we know is Ukraine needs manpower, and they're going to be looking for it wherever they can find it. If it is in some of these who have found their way through a military deferment because they've become under the critical, well, what is this? As well as we do know that people who were considered medically unfit are being looked at by doctors to see if they are fit or are not. Like my video that I released this morning spoke about, was Ukraine desperately needs just more manpower on the front line. People can talk about weapons and Western money and weapons and all this they want. If there's no man there to fire it, that is going to be where the war begins and ends. Now, the pace of mobilisation for dismissal from the service of this category is insufficient on the demobilisation of personnel aged between 18 and 25. People's Deputy Chairman of the Verkhovna Rada Committee of National Security, Defence and Intelligence, the head of the permanent delegation of Ukraine to NATO, Yehor Chernev, said that currently there are no grounds for the demobilisation of military personnel aged 18 to 25. Now, there is a conflict in this. Of course, earlier this year, the conscription age in Ukraine was lowered from 27 to 25. Personally, I believe Ukraine I'm not a fan of this. I hate saying that Ukraine need to do it, but I believe Ukraine needs to drop that right down to 18 to get just numbers on the front line. Also, this law abolished the category of those with limited fitness and fixed-term service from April. So got rid of demobilisation and what your fitness was to be re-looked at by a doctor. According to the basic law of mobilisation, men aged 18 to 25 are enrolled in the category of conscripts. And after reaching the age of 25, a person acquires the status of conscript, is enrolled in the reserve, and is subject to mobilisation. So you're enrolled at this period, but you can't be then conscripted, mobilised until you reach that age, which I believe will change, but it could be too late for it to change, honestly. However, some persons under the age of 25 can legally be mobilised. Currently, those who completed military service in peacetime, graduated from higher military education, had the status of limited fitness. Mobilised, but status become conscript at what point? Again, this is a bit hard to read into because there are exemptions to the rule. In other cases, mobilisation of persons of this age category up to 25 years is possible at their own request. So then you can volunteer to go and fight, not have the state tell you you're going to go and fight. According to him, at a closed meeting, the Ministry of Defence and General Staff, it was reported that the pace of mobilisation for dismissal from the service of this category was insufficient. There is simply no one to replace them. So if you have demobilisation, the mobilisation is not meeting that, therefore we cannot demobilise. This is a double-edged sword though, because the reason so many people are not wanting to mobilise, people are hiding, people are not recruiting, people are against it, is because there is no demobilisation law. If you go through the comments and translate them from Facebook or Instagram, whatever, people are going, well, the problem is the only way off the front is either winning the war or being 200 or 300, either killed or wounded. There's no way to actually demobilise. It's not after 6 months, 12 months, 2 years. There's no demobilisation law. So you are there until you win, die, or are wounded or removed off the front. That is one of the main problems, and this is why there's a double-edged sword. There's no one to replace them, but people aren't wanting to replace them or have gone into hiding because they're like, well, I'm never going to come off the line unless there's victory or then the worst happens. According to him, if there are appropriate indicators of mobilisation, then a question of demobilisation will be considered. So if there are indicators that enough are being mobilised, they will ask the question if demobilisation can occur. Earlier, People's Deputy Petro Poroshenko said that in 2 weeks there will be a separate draft law on the demobilisation of military personnel 18 to 25. On October 9th, the Verkhovna Rada banned the mobilisation of young men of limited fitness aged 18 to 25. However, demobilisation was never provided for in the document. After the adoption of the law on mobilisation, conflict arose, which in fact allowed the mobilisation of young men 18 to 25 who were unfit for peacetime and limited fit for wartime. Young men fit for military service were not subject to mobilisation because they fell under conscription. This is where it gets so hard in here. There are ways to conscript, areas to go, frontline duties, non-frontline duties, limited fitness, full fitness, being unfit for peacetime but fit for wartime. It is, again, very difficult to know who can be mobilised, who can be conscripted, not just age, but on fitness as well. And we do know that a lot of people are getting reassessed on that medical term. And we do know there's been a lot of doctors in spotlights too for saying people who are unfit, who may actually be fit as well. There's a lot of people who will be avoiding this as much as they can. Now, fair enough if you're avoiding a conscript draft, but there's a lot of people who are talking about the failures that are occurring and criticising who could help that then manpower shortage and go ahead and fight. There are foreign units, there are domestic units, there's all of this, and the main thing Ukraine needs right now is manpower, where people who are flying flags, who are creating propaganda, who are creating and reporting on news and criticising this too, they can actually help this also. There are people who are amputees in Ukraine who have returned to the battlefield to fight. We do know there is a manpower shortage. Deputies plan to ban mobilisation under the age of 25. Instead, the military proposes to lower the conscription age to 20, which I think we will see at some point. Ukraine needs men. Of course, this raises a whole nother set of issues that we then spoke about yesterday. Legends, look after yourselves. Have a great day. I'll let you know how it goes tonight. Bye-bye.